you.
Small gifts from the organization.
Thank you.
You can leave it here. So we are already looking at the last presentation before the break. I'd like to call my dear colleagues Victor and Arianne to the stage. And well, Arianne is expert in health data exchange, very knowledgeable in HL7 Fire. And Victor is project manager, and well, they are a really good team driving e-medication in the Netherlands, but they will tell you all about it. So please go ahead.
Thank you for this introduction. We hope to do it on time so we can go to the coffee on time. So we're going to start. Thank you for being here and listening to our presentation. My name is Victor van Hagen, and Arianne van Wetering is my colleague. We're colleagues of Esther. We're going to talk about medication in Holland. IHE. Well, we're not doing that, but we're in this block of implementation, so that's a little bit strange. It's not that we don't want to be IHE compliant, but we started a long time ago with this project, and we want to seek alignment in the future, so that's why we're here. How did it start being known about IHE? That started last year when we were in Montreux. I wasn't there, but Arianne was there. And we were there to learn, to seek information, to seek what the gap was between what we were doing and what we need to do to get aligned. So this was the Dutch delegation, and we were very interested in the testing that IHE does. So we learned from that already. Seeking international connection, that's what we want. Holland is a small country, we can't do it alone. So we want to learn of Switzerland, Italy, Canada, and America. So that's why we're here. So back to the title, Revolutionizing Healthcare in Holland. I told you that we're very small, but a revolution is going on right now. And it's about the exchange of medication data in the Netherlands. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the why we are doing this and the goal. We're also going to tell you about the current situation, the future situation. We're going to talk about testing, what we are going to do to make it work. And we're going to tell you about the program that we organized to coordinate this all. So what's the why? 75 people with avoidable medical issues get into hospital every day in Holland. And that's not what we want. So why does it happen? Well, the systems don't work. They don't connect on the right way with the information. So that's the solution. That's what we're looking at for a solution. So what is our goal? So we are working with healthcare providers and sub-suppliers of the software systems on a solution to get an accurate medication overview. Again, to see current medication, future medication, and recently discontinued medication, but also we want to have the patient characteristics, lab values, and contraindication and hypersensitivities on that medication overview. That's the goal. How are we going to do that? We're going to do it step by step. We can't do it all at once. So we have made this program, the medication transfer program, and we're going to do using with all the healthcare providers and with also the suppliers of the software, step by step, and testing a lot of along the way. And then, Arianne.
Yes, thank you. I will tell you about actually a little bit of history and how the current situation is in the Netherlands at the moment. And then, of course, our envisioned future situation first. So, as Victor said, we have this goal in our head of this really nice medication overview that's actually generated by the computer as much as possible so that health professionals have the time to treat the patient, which is what they're there for, and not having to talk to the patient to find out what's really going on with their medication. Your story was actually somewhat recognizable. So yeah, looking at the current situation, how did we get where we are now? And really, this is a classic story of automation, because when computers entered our world, what did we do? We digitalized whatever was done on paper before. And we didn't really think through. I can raise my voice. Is that okay? Yeah. Didn't really think through about the possibilities of automation, which is process optimization, and later on there was business process redesign, and a lot of consultants got rich over it. But anyway, first thing we did was automate the paper situation, the prescription, and to be honest, that helps. So a patient will go to, it's working again. We'll go to a doctor with a potential problem, and medication may resolve it, so the doctor will send a prescription to a pharmacy. Closer. Even louder. But later on, that same patient may have to go to a different doctor, a different physician, and that doctor will again maybe prescribe medication, and will send a prescription to yet another pharmacy. So now there's all these parties involved, but they don't have a complete overview of what the patient is taking. And they still need to talk to the patient a lot, which, you know, is painful. So, and it was in the Netherlands especially felt by the pharmacies. So there was a next step driven by the pharmacies saying, okay, let's share our dispense information. And they did this using a pool model. So actually anyone connected to our national infrastructure, any health professional can ask for a patient all the dispenses, and it will get virtually all dispenses, because virtually all pharmacies are connected, and we're, I don't know, there's people around here, I think we're over 98% coverage of dispenses. So that's flowing around really well between health professionals that are connected. So you might think, our health professionals are happy now, because they have all the information, right? No. Actually, there's some information problems with this dispense information that's being shared, because it's hard to link them together. It gives the health professional both too much information and not enough information. Too much information, because like with Baxter patients, you get dispenses every week, and how are you going to distill the clinically relevant information from it? But there's also not enough, because sometimes a doctor tells you to stop taking medication. But why would it send a prescription to a pharmacist? There's no dispense needed. So it takes time before you know that the patient's not taking that anymore. And of course, the medication errors that Victor was telling about is always occurring on patients with frequent medication changes. So in order to reach our goal, we need to have a really accurate medication overview every second in our lives, and not in 3 weeks. So we had to do something. So we're going to migrate from the current situation to a future situation. And in the future situation, we've designed a model where we separate out the medically relevant information from the logistics information. So in this model on the right side, the top level is the clinically relevant information, whereas the bottom level represents the logistics information. You also see some columns, and that's just the columns, the processes in the medication. So the first column is prescribing, done by the doctors. The second is dispensing, done by the pharmacies. The third is administering, and then there's medication use, which is also used to do medication validation. So in order to reach our goal, we have to focus on that top level of this diagram, the therapy information. Of course, the bottom level is important, because the medication still needs to go to the patient. But the top level is important for our medication overview. So how are we going to do this? Because as Victor told you, we have a distributed care system. And all these building blocks in this model are individually instantiable, and they need to be individually identified, persisted, and exchanged. Meaning you know, all these parties are going to create these building blocks, instances. Oh, going too quick. So looking at this, it's still hard, of course, to make a good medication overview. So how are you going to do that? We've introduced a concept, and in Dutch, now listen well, we call it medicamenteuze behandeling. So there's a prize, right? Any non-Dutch speaker being able to pronounce that correctly at the end of the day, come to me. We translate it into medication treatment. The way I usually explain it, it's one row in your medication overview. So one medication treatment is one row. Patients using something once a day since 1st of January until the end of time. That's one row. Of course, you know, if you with the computers today, you can click on it and then down drill, look at all the history, everything that's happened. But this is how you have to think about the medication treatment. So all these building blocks, it's really only an identification. All these building blocks share this ID of the medication treatment. It's just a correlation ID, really. And this allows all these systems to actually work together with this patient in the same medication treatment. So we bind it together using medication treatment. It's not enough, because then once you've got them together, you still have a bunch of building blocks. And you have to constitute that one row. You have to distill the medical truth. For the medication overview, it's actually 3 important building blocks. The medication agreement, which is what the doctor said, then the administration agreement, which you already pointed out. It's more concrete, you know which brand he's taking, and then the medication use. The patient may register it, but it's also the verification building block. And these 3 building blocks actually will make up the right-hand side of this medication overview, which is our dream. And Victor will tell you about the left-hand side later on. Yeah, so this is actually revolutionizing the medication overview, not just for us, but also for our vendors. But before I go into that, people that have studied the program may have seen that my job is actually to translate the functional model into technical specifications. And I recognize very much what you were saying, because we also have a vendor demand saying, we want fire, we want fire, we want fire. But then we have other vendors saying, we've invested so heavily in HL7 version 3, don't start using fire, because it will be years and years and years before we can help you with that. So we did decide to do both fire and HL7 version 3. And Esther, she's been very strict with me, so I'm only allowed to talk for 12 minutes, and we can talk for hours. So feel free to come to us. We're here the rest of the week. But I'll briefly show you how we mapped our functional model onto CDA and fire. For CDA, it's actually all the top-level therapy building blocks are on substance administration, whereas the bottom level are on supply, CDA clinical statement supply. Fire actually has a different approach. So with fire, you see that it has a resource for each column in our model. Meaning medication request is in the prescribe section, medication dispense in the dispense, well, and so on. That makes our mapping, especially in that prescribe and dispense section, a bit artificial, because as I said, we need all the instances to be individually identifiable and exchangeable. Meaning we have a profile for the therapy building block and a different profile for the logistics building block. I got a 5-minute warning. And Victor gets 4 more minutes. So one last slide about testing. Actually, as we're speaking, our vendors are testing today. Remote, but next week we again will be having a session with them in one room. It's not as huge as here. It's not as huge as someone was saying, 2,000 participants. We have like 80, but we're still proud of it. It's all our vendors participating in our Kickstart at the moment. And we're using Interop Lab, which I believe you're using here on the floor as well, so to manage the testing. And with that, I want to give you the floor for telling about the medication program.
Yep. So thank you. How many minutes? 3, 2. All right. The basis of the program is foundation, development and testing, and implementation and use. The foundation is, of course, the standard we are developing, but also the agreements, how to use this information in the field with the healthcare. So by giving these components, the agreements and the standard, we're gonna go to development. Suppliers are now implementing this, and we're gonna test it, and we're gonna add the healthcare suppliers of the healthcare, the actual doctors and everything, to that process in the testing to see if it works. Not only the standard, does it give the information you need, but also are the agreements we made workable. Again, this is the plan, and we're gonna do it step by step. We can't do it all at once. So we implementing every time, and we, again, see if it's gonna work. We're now here, and we're sort of still on schedule. Testing takes a lot of time, and we see that suppliers, they say that they're gonna be ready for a phase, but then one supplier is a little bit further than the other one, and you try the test, and that, well, they don't connect. We're still in the margins of the plan, but it takes a lot of time testing. First, we're going to do that in 2 regions, up in Friesland and up in Rotterdam. Good to know is in Rotterdam is the biggest hospital in Holland, Erasmus MC, a university hospital. So we have a big player joining us in this testing. After testing with a couple of suppliers, we're going to put more volume into these regions. Then we're going to add new regions. And then we're going to go global, national, of course. Global is something we want. First we take Manhattan and then we take the rest. All right. Exchanging knowledge. Again, we're here to connect with everybody. We are not IHE yet, but we know that there is a gap, and we want to learn what we're doing right or what we're doing wrong, and how we're going to get there to be compliant. A recap, because we're saying we're revolutionizing healthcare in Holland. So we have a motive, things are going wrong. So we have a goal, medication overview. And we have a plan. But now we need a challenge. We call it an ambition, but it is a challenge. We need to connect to the world and to all the Europe countries, and we hope to learn from you. And we're going to be there for a couple of days, so find us, talk to us, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, both Victor and Arianne. This is for you. We have time for 1 or 2 questions. Yeah, in the back.
Yes.
Hi. What is your plan to engage on or enforce patients to provide information about medication use?
Enforce is not the right word. We try to be, and there needs to be incentive that they are a participant in the whole process of the healthcare. And 3 of app builders are now also into this plan, so they think with us how they can make useful interface to get that information into the system, into the network of exchange. So it's not enforcement, it's more a sort of incentive of usefulness and patient participant. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mauricio, and then Charles.
In your example at the beginning, we saw that you can send the prescription to more pharmacy. How do you manage the consent problem of the patient, GDPR? He has to give the consent to the pharmacies to have to look his personal data.
Yeah, actually, It's managed by the pharmacies themselves. So whenever you go to a pharmacy, they will ask you, do you want to give opt-in, so that your regular pharmacy and your regular doctor will have your information. And patients may say yes or no. Yeah, it's opt-in model in the Netherlands as well. They're actually trying to go to opt-out as well. There's some political movements asking for it, but yeah, not yet.
Charles?
Yes, you spoke of deployment starting with two regions, the Friesland and the Rotterdam area. And your speech was around testing. And I'm hearing testing and deployment being mixed, where for me, there are two very separate concepts. If your testing is not quite sufficient and you have two pilot deployments, you're going to find gaps. You may find gaps on the third one, therefore you'll have to go and fix back the first two. So isn't there some kind of a confusion where you need a testing track and a deployment track with a level of maturity of the testing track and avoid having one or two pilot? Yes, but you would have 10 pilots, it would be typically the same thing. There is a bit of a contradiction. Yeah. Could you clarify?
Yeah, good question, thank you. The first testing phase is going to take 2 years. So in those two areas, we're going to test with a small group of health caretakers and with a couple of suppliers, and we're going to thoroughly test it through for 2 years, and then we're going to say, is it mature enough to do to go to the national level. So there is especially when we go to other areas, there are going to be new conflicts, and we're going to need to resolve that. But we don't know, we're not in detail yet how that's going to work. But so it's more the hoover over kind of plan now, how we're going to do it. But the details, well, we'll come back next year and tell you.
But I'm not hearing something that I was expecting to hear. Testing tools. Mm-hmm. The problem is that if you do testing against actual systems, mm-hmm. you're going to make them work. They may be wrong, they may not follow the spec, but they're going to work great. Oh. So the question is, you have to make sure you have solid testing tools before you do the first deployment with a limited set of vendors. So that there is a testing maturity that I think needs to be maybe more explicitly or clearly addressed, mm-hmm. so that you don't fall into the trap of getting 2 or 3 vendors working together and having excluded or created a problem you're going to realize 2 years down the road.
Yeah, we do actually have the specification stubs and the certification process. So all of the vendors will have to come through to also and go through all these. You don't want to know how many test cases we have. Actually, they're scared by it as well. But if you go to our wiki page, it's incredible, and they have to actually get all the green little circles or check marks and go through it using specification as well as interoperability testing together. Yeah, we have thought of that.